such a magnificent gift. Like resilience is, whatever it is, we could probably talk and talk and talk and talk and talk through lifetimes to try to appreciate its magnificence, its beauty, and its grace and gift to life and to human life.
Hello, everyone. We're back. It's a place called Resilience Podcast. I'm Martin Perry, and I'm delighted to be joined by my friend and co-host, Emmy Shalling. Greetings, Emmy.
Hi, Martin.
Hi. And tonight, we have a special guest. It's my pleasure and privilege to welcome our friend, Jeremy Stuart. Jeremy, greetings.
Greetings, Emmy. Greetings, Martin. Pleasure to be here. Thank
How are
you
you?
very much for your warm invitation.
So, for those of you watching for the first time, A Place Called Resilience podcast is a research into the quality of resilience. What is it? What part does it play in our growth and development journey? Of the 5 episodes so far, they've created a feeling of a portraiture, a mosaic, different feelings, frequencies, and characteristics of resilience aligned with the uniqueness of each person. Emmy.
Well, Jeremy and myself, we have met, but I don't know much about you. We have had a little exchange, so I'm very much looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better.
So, Jeremy, what part has resilience played in your growth, personal, and development journey?
Seems to me the first place I can locate it was really when I went to school. That's when I think the need started to arise. Because up until that point, it seems to me that I was gliding through my early years with a great joy and a great strength, and couldn't really say I felt the need for resilience. It may well have been there, probably was, but it came more to the conscious fore in myself when I went to school, because that's when I met certain kinds of challenges. And at first, those were very confronting and large for a child that hasn't experienced much of life yet. Things that can be small to adults can be very, very large for children. And I'm very aware of that. And so certain challenges came my way, and I needed to have a quality that enabled me to come back to things, return to things that maybe had been confronting or difficult. Let's say upon a first acquaintance or a first experience or a first meeting. And a good measure of that actually was other children and their curious ways, and uh, being small in stature, being small in height. I did experience bullying at school. In fact, I remember it's primary school being a gang of children lifting me up and throwing me in the bin. This big bin with wheels where lots of the trash went, the rubbish. And you have to rationalize that as a child. You have to say, well, why is this happening to me? What is this about? This is very strange. I didn't expect this to happen. Uh, and I laugh, and I laugh deliberately because one of the things I discovered was that being able to see the funny side of things is very helpful in the growth of resilience in oneself. And so, although at the time it was quite disconcerting and it wasn't particularly a painful experience in terms of physicality, it was more bewildering. But, I was only in the bin for a few seconds and then I got fished out, and that was that. It wasn't, the end of the world. Um, but later on, I deliberately took myself back to that experience as an older person, not as that child, and overwrote that bewilderment with a wistfulness deliberately so that I wouldn't be affected by it, because I don't want to be affected by that for the rest of my years
Mm.
and conditioned by what happened to me. Those children weren't malicious, they weren't nasty, they were just experimenting, having fun, and were a bit unaware, like children are, of what it might cause to have that done to you. They weren't out to get me or anything. It was not really that personal, actually. And
Yeah.
I witnessed that many children at school got bullied in variant ways. There was always a reason to be found to bully others. So it wasn't particularly aimed at me personally, and there was no reason to take it that way.
Could I just jump in here because you're saying something already very significant
Sure.
in whereby you have an experience, you're thrown in the bin. What age were you when that happened?
Probably about 6.
You're 6 years old, which can, for some people could be traumatic. Um, but then you return to the experience some years later, and you said you overwrote it with wistfulness.
Yeah.
Just explain to us what it is you did and how you did it.
Mm. Yeah. So, I sat down and deliberately took myself back in my mind to that experience. Started to come inside of the feelings of what that was like. But also, although starting to touch the experience again, sort of re-enliven that experience in myself. At the same time, there was a sense of partial detachment. It wasn't like I was indulging in the experience, as it were. It was more because I deliberately went into that process wanting to heal something in myself. So there was a partial detachment in which, although I believe that life still lives in me. There's the 1-year-old in me, there's the 2-year-old, the 3-year-old, the 4-year-old, and so forth, right up to my current age. They're all in there, as far as I'm concerned. But I was bringing an older part of myself to a younger part of myself in a kind of brotherly, fatherly, parental, caring, loving way to myself, to that part of myself, that life within myself, to to acknowledge it and to let it know that it was all right. And from a different point in time, a different view could be had about it that could overlay the previous view and cause the healing because of it.
So you've returned to 6-year-old you, you've returned to the incident and the moment and place and time with reflection, with a lightness of being, with an understanding. And how did you know that that had healed or aided 6-year-old Jeremy to the point where you could then be satisfied that all was well?
Yeah, so the way I did it, which was quite intuitive actually, was to speak to that life in me. And it's not the first time I've done this. And what I've always noticed is that when I speak, I actually speak out aloud and I talk to that life. If there's a response, I feel it immediately. And what I felt was almost a joy, a liberation in that life. I think I'm not entirely sure how I would articulate that even, but what my feeling about it is that there's a joy in being recognized and being confirmed, being acknowledged. That's a joy. There's a joy in being comforted, in being understood. And there's a joy in being led by the hand into something which is better, a more mature view, a part of an understanding that quietens down, that brings solace, that brings a breadth of view, whatever it brings, that helps. It's help and assistance. And help and assistance is a universal quality as far as I'm concerned. And from wherever it cometh, we recognize it and we welcome it and it's appreciated. And so I felt that part of me, that life in me, lighten. And yeah, it felt joyous. The joy of being acknowledged rather than being ignored or suppressed or buried deep, which, we all do, actually, I think. But I try not to.
Yeah. Emmy, anything you want to put in here?
Well, it makes me very light and joyous to hear this story in a simplicity that we can all apply in our lives. Because the parent that would come and assist the child in us and speak to it and explain the situation and embrace the child, that's comforting and encouraging for me at least, and maybe for others as well, to try it out. Just see what happens if you talk to the child in yourself with the knowledge and understanding that we have today. It's a beautiful example. Thank you.
Yeah, and I feel I must add something as well. And it's to do with sincerity. And yeah, somehow it seems to me that the human is hardwired to it, hardwired to recognize sincerity and respond to it. People do. People respond when you're being sincere most of the time. And there's something about that sincere approach, the sincere sentiment of wishing to help, wishing to alleviate oneself or part of oneself. And I feel that that's a really, really important note that absolutely has to be present when you try this with yourself, if you do try it. I certainly recommend it. But if you come with that note of sincerity, then and that sort of soft touch, I'm dealing with a 6-year-old. You wouldn't speak to a 6-year-old in harsh terms, in harsh ways. It doesn't fit. It's a young life, tender life. So you need to come at it the right way. So yeah, that was all part of it, really.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you're sharing with us a very good tool, a very insightful tool that takes us into your relationship with yourself, with wisdom, guidance, life experience, know-how, compassion, recognition, care, all close by in the relationship between you and you. Is that a practice that you've adopted throughout your life? Not just the 6-year-old Jeremy, but 10-year-old Jeremy, 12-year-old Jeremy, and so on throughout the lives of Jeremy?
Yes, I'll practice it. I'll do it according to need. So if something comes up, I recognize something, I'll deal with it there and then if I can. If not, I'll deal with it later. So, and I do think the practice then encourages those parts of oneself, those lives of oneself to make themselves known because they can. If you hear the call, if you're open to the call will come when needed.
Which do you think is the abiding or the principal quality or qualities at play in this relationship with self? Are you talking about compassion? Are you talking about understanding? Um, what's the primary governance and motivation inside of it?
Well, you may be surprised to hear I'd say purpose. And I'd like to say why. I say purpose because I've decided that I want to be an evolving person. I want to be a developing person. And if that's what I choose to be, then one of the considerations is that which holds me back. And certainly, if parts of me are arrested or fixed or stuck back down my timeline, that can only be preventative in small or larger ways upon my progress. So it's from the standpoint of my own self-decided purpose that directs me to something of this nature. Pure and simple.
Yeah. Jeremy, have I understood well from what you've just shared with us that in addressing yourself, sometimes addressing yourself out loud, you have discovered new lives in yourself that you didn't know before?
It's almost like that. It's more remembering, evoking lives that maybe I've forgotten about. Well, not so much evoking, but they appear. They appear in all kinds of different situations. You never know when something is going to make itself known. It can be the a smell that can trigger it. It can be a feeling. Feelings are a big one in this. So a particular feeling that's caused by a conversation with somebody or an instance of an event of some kind becomes triggering, and suddenly, because I'll think to myself, oh, why did I have a funny reaction when they came at me with that attitude, or when they said that word, or when I was in that circumstance, that environment? Why did I suddenly feel like this or like that? And I thought, oh, maybe, oh, it was to do with that I experienced when I was 11 years old. And so then there's the moment, there's the window of opportunity. Ah, here's a chance to rewrite something in oneself.
Wow, that's impressive. So, do you tend to take rubbings or little triggers in yourself? Do you tend to take them as opportunities more than irritations?
No, I would say it's probably an even balance. I'm not that good. I'm only human. So, you know, there are certain things which I've been discovering very recently. It's an ongoer, it's not something that finishes. Yeah, there's certain things which still am struggling with. And I don't yet know the causation. I don't know the origination of them in myself yet. So I'm still on that journey of exploration. Sometimes I can take a rubbing as an opportunity. Sometimes it gets right up my nose or it causes whatever, some kind of reactivity or fractiousness, and it takes me a while to get over it. Um, and there's certainly trends I've discovered. There's certain lines which uh, I know there's a line to do with control. If I feel like I've lost control, if I feel like somebody else is kind of controlling me, if I perceive it in that way, I think somebody's trying to manipulate me in some way. Gosh, that's a difficult one, and I'm not sure. I should think there's probably a few points in my life where that one surfaced. So that's one which I'm yet to kind of source in myself. And that's okay. I'm not expecting to it'll take the time it takes. That's one of the things I've learned about life. Things will take the time they take, and I need to accept that and have a bit of humility where that's concerned. Because there's something about this process which it has its own way, it has its own timing, and I have to respect that if it's going to work. If you try and force anything or be preemptive, it just doesn't work. That's my experience.
Yeah, yeah, that's mine too, yes.
So, like anything, there's going to be those that are a bit more easy to see and a little bit easier to resolve, and then there's some which are going to take a bit more time, may take a bit more reasoning, a bit more depth. Depends what the wound was like, how harsh it was, how deep it went. And we can help each other out in this, of course, as well.
Yes, sure, yes. And is there a moment either in having the patience to wait for the moment that you can tackle something or face something, that patience comes in, or is it that resilience comes in, or is it, how does it feature, or does it feature resilience?
Hmm.
Do you call upon resilience to let it have its time, or do you call upon resilience to approach something that you are a bit fearful of?
Yeah, I hadn't really considered it, where resilience exactly features in this process. So it's a great question, great promotion. It seems to me there's an aggregation of resilience in the experiences that I mentioned, the struggles, the confronts. You see, when I was contemplating joining today on this podcast, three things stood out to me about the word resilience. The first was silence. That was it. The word silence is in the word resilience, and I thought that was really, really important and really significant. The second word that came to mind, which isn't in resilience, but it's close by, and that's resistance. And then the third one that came to me was the word rise. So we have silence, we have resistance, and we have rise. That's what appeared. And yeah, so I'm just remembering your question now. Yes, yes. So with the aggregation of resilience in oneself as one lives, I think that's very much to do with the resistance aspect. And we know at the physical level, in the development of muscles and muscle tone and strength, that the muscles need to work against a resistance if they're to strengthen. So I think this is one of the ways, perhaps, that resilience builds and grows within us, is by virtue of coming into contact with resistances of all many different kinds. So I'd say that. I don't know if does that answer your question to some degree, or does it open up your question?
Yeah, it does. It's a beginning.
Mm.
So I could verbalize it differently. Do you need resilience to sometimes to face a matter, or do you sometimes call upon resilience to be patient with it, with the matter, because you know you need patience before you can actually tackle it?
Yeah, the way it turned up to me was that it was courage in myself that called it, that summoned it. Because I do believe, that everything has a call sign or call signs. And it seems to me that courage is one of the call signs of resilience. So the courage to face in oneself that which is uncomfortable, that which is difficult or causing one trouble or painful, causing one to experience pain. And yeah, so I put it in that way.
I'd like to pick up on something you said a few moments ago, which was very striking. You said you've chosen to be an evolving human.
Mm.
I don't recall hearing many people say that. It's a very clear position taken. And I'm wondering, because that to me is a bigger picture theme. You're talking about three things: the evolution, the human, and you. You've created a context. You've created a bigger picture. In that position you've taken to be an evolving human strikes me as creating like a governance upon which whatever struggles, whatever challenges, whatever difficulties, whatever barriers, whatever resistances, whatever obstacles you face, you're facing them in the context of I choose to be an evolving human.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm very, very interested to know the part that context plays in allowing you to be able to continue your development and growth journey in the face of living in this part of the universe.
Yeah. Well, when you said a bigger picture, for me, that is absolutely prime in this because I was thinking earlier to myself, if all I think about is myself, that's all I can draw upon. And I'm not going to be able to go any further than I currently am at, quite simply. It's a very simple idea, a very simple principle, and I think a very simple truth. But if I'm able to extend my view, extend my appreciation beyond myself to something much, much greater, then other things become possible in that moment. And see, to me, resilience must live in life everywhere. And I say that because we're a recent appearance as human beings. We're new kids on the block, if you like. We really are. But life's been going at it for a very, very long time. Such a long time, it's unimaginable to me. Billions and gazillions of years. Well, you'd think if something, I do like simple reasoning. I like simple things very much. And to me, it must be a simple fact that if life has been ongoing in the universe or universes for so long, it must have some kind of resilience to do it, to continue, to be able to continue, whatever it takes to be able to do that. And to me, that's great. That's a great uplift and a great inspiration and a wonder and a delight and an awe-striking sense. Wow. I was thinking to myself earlier, I like to think about this. What great mighty power is behind? See, in England at the moment, we're in spring. We've entered into the season of spring. It's an incredible time where things start appearing. And there's this great surge. And after winter, it's very inspiring and uplifting to witness this surge. I've been seeing daffodils appearing around the place. It's glorious. They're brilliant. They're bright. They're wonderful, wonderful. But there's a force, there's a power behind that. It's one thing to have a look at a cluster or a gathering of daffodils, right? It's another thing to think about all the life in this hemisphere on the planet that is surging right now. What's the power behind that? super powerful, almost scary in its potency. So it strikes me, yeah, whatever that power is, life's resilient and it has multiple expressions. It's just undeniable. I cannot deny it. And that to me is a wonderful, wonderful thing because that's something I can rely upon. And that's something that's got all kinds of mysteries like wisdom, intelligence, and ways which I don't even fathom yet. And that to me is a huge inspiration. And also the body I live in. If you want to see resilience, look no further than the human system, human body. Phenomenal. And I've deliberately taken myself, deliberately so, over the years, to many, many stories, interviews, books, anecdotes of just that, the resilience of the human. The body, the human body, and the human spirit and the human will. And I find that deeply, deeply fortifying and deeply, deeply inspiring. But it's beyond myself because I didn't make my body. I turned up in it, but didn't make it. So I can trust whatever it is. And I know that I can draw upon the resilience that it has. It's right there. It's right here in any moment. And that to me is absolutely real and absolutely fortifying because I know it, I feel it, and I believe it. And I think that belief is a very, very powerful portal or pathway or conduit or connective thread to these great qualities like resilience. I think you have to love it. And I think to myself, I've got to love it. I've got to respect it, got to cherish it, got to be awestruck by it. These are very, very conductive, if you like, sentiments which can bring you close to things. And that's how I feel about the body I live in, the body it takes me around when I want to get around. It's full of fortitude, it's full of strength, full of resilience. And what a wonderful thing. It's beautiful.
If you allow me to go back to the question Martin just posed you, would you be willing to give an example where your life experience was increased or fortified or magnified by the sense and the awareness of the bigger picture? Your whole run was actually a beautiful example of it, but I'm just wondering if you have a practical example.
Yeah, of course. And practical examples are so important in this. I'll tell you a time when I was added to by the majesty of the bigger picture. I took a trip to Israel in 1993. I went on an exchange scheme from the university I was attending in England to Jerusalem University. And luckily for me, the dean of the faculty suggested I went and explore the Holy Land. So I did. And I didn't really do much university work at all. And I'm glad because I learnt so much more than I would have learnt in a classroom by going out and traveling the land. And I found myself at Masada in the Negev Desert, which is an incredible landscape and place. And there was something about sitting atop this rather alien-esque rock in an alien-esque environment because I come from the southwest of England, rural Wiltshire. So sitting atop a mountain in a Negev desert in the Middle East, it was pretty alien to my upbringing and my experience. It was a really extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary event. And it allowed something else to happen in me because the overwhelming feature of that environment was the space. And I could look out for miles and miles and miles and see Bedouin traveling. And there was something about, I believe it was something to do with the history of the place combined with the landscape and the site and the fact it was very alien to me, that it filled me with awe. Because there I was, sat in a place which really had been unchanged for, well, I don't know how many thousands of years. It's got this timeless quality, like sometimes being at sea can have this timeless quality. And suddenly it kind of shrinks all the local affairs of oneself and another space opens. And so there's something about that bigger picture that being in that open space and that kind of timeless sense was totally fortifying. Because maybe this is the part of resilience to do with rise, because somehow you're rising above the local. That's how it felt to me, into something that's much more permanent. It's quite difficult to articulate, really. It's a very, very rich weave of feelings and senses in oneself, kind of conscious and also semi-conscious. So I wouldn't claim to be able to explain it away, and I wouldn't want to explain it away. It was magnificent and moving and beautiful. So that would be one instance.
Wonderful. It gives me the feeling that you, but also anyone who is listening to this podcast, could look for a place like that they could return to for themselves, to just sit and be filled with that feeling they had in a particular place they once visited, to become calm again in this, well, what do you call it, in this chaotic world, to be close to that feeling again.
Yeah, and again, I need to add something which is very important. It's to do with being empty. You just can't manufacture it in yourself. It's something that happens. If you're empty, then you can be filled up with what's nearby
Mm.
in that moment. And I was vacant, quite cheerful, but I wasn't particularly studious. Wasn't trying to understand the history of the place. Yes, I got some reflections, got some impressions about the history, but I wasn't coming at it with that kind of mind. I was just really, really delighted to be out there and fascinated by the place. So I was pretty vacant, and I think that's an important feature.
Mm.
And for some people, they may be able to be vacant quite quickly. I think I was, as sort of luck would have it, perhaps. But for another person, it may take a bit of time to settle and to feel comfortable enough, and almost give the permission to oneself to be vacant without expectancy. And it will come. It will come.
This may refer to the silence.
Exactly. It crossed my mind as you were speaking.
Mm.
Yeah, because something struck me about that again when I was contemplating this podcast and this opportunity. And one thing I felt about resilience very strongly is that somehow there's a simplicity at its core. And we need to meet it with a simplicity perhaps in ourselves. And I think this silence aspect is very profound and very true, that there's a simpleness about it, or simplicity about it. And when we're noisy within and when we're spread too thin, then it can be difficult to find it. The analogy of the tree came to mind.
Mm.
That was a really strong imagery. The idea of having a very, very simple and very strong heart or core, but having the flexibility. And I think those two qualities of simplicity and flexibility are integral to whatever this mysterious life of resilience is, in which I'm not an expert.
feels to me like you're describing layers of context. So we began this part of the foray into bigger picture thinking. You took a position, I want to be an evolving human. A bigger picture view, and then you gave us a glimpse into the universe. Then you took us into the Negev Desert, and you took us to a place of ancient history and all that's gone there before. And you began your journey today by finding yourself in the dustbin. And if we place those three things, the great bigger picture of the universe and life in this part of the universe, the deep haunting silence of the Negev Desert, and those who've passed that way before, and being in a dustbin. In terms of context, being in a dustbin seems inconsequential against the other two imageries, feelings, and sentiments. Of course, being in the dustbin is not ideal. But if you're creating layers of context that begins with a bigger picture view of the universe, and we can consider how to hold that picture or sentiment or image, within the haunting feeling held inside of oneself of being in the Negev Desert in an unforgettable way, almost influential, as in, does the Negev Desert now live in you?
Mm.
And if true, either or all of those contexts, locations become causative, as in offering guidance views into life and circumstance in this part of the universe.
Mm. Yes.
Which allows the person to look at being thrown in the dustbin, and I'm highlighting that as one example of the challenges we can face, but looking through the lens of context and what context brings in terms of, say, wisdom, acceptance. This will be forgotten about in 50 years' time, or whatever the context sentiments are. What do you think about that as a kind of a portrayal of what you're saying?
It's original. It's quite a new consideration and juxtaposition of these three parts. And I love the originality of it, totally, because this can open up something which never came together before.
Mm.
And, regarding being in the dustbin, well, I said earlier, didn't I, that muscles can't develop without resistance. And somehow being down here, and it does feel like down here on this planet, at least it does to me. It's a place of resistances and it's a place of struggles. And, maybe it wasn't meant to be an easy glide. And I think if it was an easy glide, could I be an evolving person or an intending evolving person or a trying to evolve person? And I think not. I think not. And in the bigger picture of time that extends beyond the one life, even, then these small events are stepping stones along the way of significance, but they don't have to be impediments to one's progress. In fact, they probably catalyze one's progress in actual fact. And so, what the way something can seem at the time is one thing, but the way something can seem later on can be something else. And I think this ability to not be fixed by things is so important in the life of resilience. because things that are fixed tend to be brittle, and resilience strikes me as being supple, something that has a great suppleness, an all-striking one. What part does resilience play in an evolving journey? Does resilience play a part? Is it a necessary part? If so, what does that feel like, and what is that like?
Well, maybe let's bring it back to fixed versus unfixed.
Mm.
You talked about the character of resilience leans towards supple, unfixed versus fixed. Give us an example of how fixed or fixed thinking or fixed behavior or fixed psychology may negate resilience.
I see narrow a narrow mind or a narrow way of appreciating something as vulnerable. And you can see it in judgment. That person is dot dot dot. And it can leave you open to reactivity, uh, even aggression. But as long as there is room for doubt and room for a different view, then there's an openness for something else. And I feel it's really important, especially at a time like this, to have the the practice and the ability to be able to keep open on the move about things and not to fixate upon a particular approach, a particular viewpoint. It's in the multiplicity and the variance that strengths come, real strengths come. I see that with the collective as well. It's the same principle in oneself or in a gathering of people. The variance is the strength. So that's how it turns up to me, really, as a first reflection.
Yeah, that part about the judgment, I think that that is very alive. We happened to walk the dog this morning, and we met a lady who said something about a neighbor, and she was obviously not happy with what the lady had said to her, and I suggested to her that she may apologize tomorrow. And she said, well, she said it 1 year and a half ago. I said, well, she can still change her mind and say sorry to you about it. People say sorry about things from 10 years ago. So
Yes.
I said, I try to keep the deed separated from the person, because if you do so, you create space in yourself that something may change. And this may be a key to be more flexible towards change in self and in others, because if you want to be an evolving person, you need to keep space in yourself for you changing as well as the other. So this for me is a way of using resilience as a tool to make the change in self.
Yeah, that's a real and beautiful wisdom. There's such a beautiful wisdom in what you've articulated there. Curiously, I saw it slightly differently. I saw that the practice that you were describing there builds the resilience or supports the resilience in oneself.
Mm,
Hey, maybe it's both.
maybe it's both. Yes.
Because I do see it has its supportive practices, like anything. But that's a wonderful example. What a wonderful way to live.
What did you find beautiful about that wisdom, Jeremy?
It's grace, it's extension of compassion, understanding, and its capacity to allow for improvements and change. And those are all beautiful things.
Yeah, thank you. I think you've added another element here, Emmy, into this, into the mix of the relationship between resilience and evolution, the character of resilience, and then fixed, unfixed. That if you are an evolving human, don't be surprised at what comes next. Don't be surprised at who you grow into. And that feels quite a sentiment close into what Jeremy is sharing about fixed, unfixed, supple, walking barefoot, a lightness of being that somehow feels close into the bigger picture view in the Negev Desert and the image of lightness of being as a feature of the evolving human, which then allows light to be shone on finding oneself in a dustbin at a tender age. The light that is then shone on that releases the person from the dustbin into the recognition of life in this part of the universe brings some interesting challenges. Expect the unexpected, but view them through a lightness of being lens, because the lightness of being lens brings compassion, humanity, understanding, care, wisdom, nurturing, almost as if you're now beginning to draw in properties and qualities from the universe. And in a meditation in the Negev Desert, where all is well, and all is quiet and still, and silence is close by, these properties possibly are able to be felt. And now rain down and rain into life in this part of the universe and the evolving human, offering a multitude of qualities as an aid to growth. Growth being, the outplay theatre of the evolving person. So that was a way of trying to bring all parts together in where we are now.
I feel very moved to say something at this juncture, if I may,
Yes, you may.
because it's closer to the heart of what's been moving in me since you invited me to this podcast. And, I took it seriously. I didn't take it casually because to me, it's a wonderful opportunity. And for me, it's so very important and feels so right to consider each instance of making a small effort. But actually, when you look back over a period of, say, 30 years or 50 years, it really aggregates to something significant, actually. Not to be underestimated. It's not to be underestimated, many, many small daily efforts. They become something mighty in the end. So they're not to be dismissed or discounted or undervalued. It's amazing, actually, the power of lots of small efforts. It's quite something. It aggregates. There's no doubt about it. Brings all kinds of strength. So don't give up, and don't mind if you don't have a quick fix. Just keep going.
So it feels like we're coming to the point of drawing the curtain on this stage of the journey. A beautiful and magical glimpse into the unique life and appearance in this part of the universe that is you. A kaleidoscope of imagery, sentiment, wisdoms, and truths that I think are very valuable. Emmy, any final words regarding your experience tonight with Jeremy?
It was humbling, as I said. You felt like a powerhouse, Jeremy, and it was enriching for all of us. And thank you, gentlemen, for your presence.
Yeah. I want to speak directly to whoever is watching this at this particular point. To you, whoever you are, wherever you are. And I'd like to say, perhaps from the life of resilience, I would say to you this: always remember, it's nearby, even if it seems it's at distance. It's just a call away, ready and waiting to serve in our lives down here. Always remember that. Call upon it, it'll be right there. I do promise you that.
So this has been a Place Called Resilience podcast. I'm Martin Perry. I've been with my friend and co-host, Emmy Sharling, and it's been a real pleasure and privilege to be in the presence of Jeremy Stuart as he shared stories, reflections, and insights on his life in this part of the universe and the part resilience has played in it. Jeremy, thank you very, very much.
Thank you both. Thank you, Emmy. Thank you, Martin, so much for the invitation, for the opportunity, and for the time we spent together. It's been wonderful. I've really, really, really enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. See you all next time.
Go well.
Take care.